Tuesday, October 18th. It all begins. DeRozan to win it. 76ers travel to Boston.
The offensive rebound.
The near finals champion Boston Celtics.
Smart fakes inside. Tatum spins, but he puts it in. Celtics.
And the LA Lakers, who struggled last year.
The Lakers, they're at 12. All of a sudden, Bane with a burst of speed.
Look to take on the NBA champions in the Golden State Warriors.
Steph for the win. Yes, sir!
It all begins in 3 weeks. Let's dive in. Yo, what is going on, you guys? It's your boy King Sanders here. We are finally here with our first official video of the entire year for fantasy basketball. Man, I'm super stoked about it. If you guys are new to the channel, my name is King Sanders. Basically what I do, I pick spreads, I pick player props, I pick over-unders for NBA and for the NFL. So that is something that I really love to do. I am also a huge basketball fan, over the top fan, like huge basketball fan. So make sure that if you guys are new, make sure that you guys do like, comment, subscribe. We're going to be posting fantasy basketball content multiple times a week. So I'm super excited about it, just to try to help you guys win your fantasy basketball drafts. So without any further ado, this video is going to be a long one. I don't really want to ramble on too much. So I'm going to talk about basically what this video is going to be. So this video, what it is going to be is what I personally feel like you should be going for in the first round of your fantasy basketball drafts, who I think you should draft, why I think you should draft them, and basically everything in between. Guys that I like more than others, guys that I don't like so much, stuff like that. So I am super excited to dive into it. This is our first official fantasy basketball video of the entire year. I'm going with a first round draft guide. I'm super excited to dive into it. But before we did, I did just want to go ahead and address this. This is going to be strictly for ESPN fantasy basketball point style, so not categories. This is strictly based off of points. With that being said, I'm also the most teams that you can have in a fantasy basketball league for ESPN is 20. So for this video is going to have 20 players that I think should be in your first round of your fantasy basketball draft. So like I said, I'm doing it based off of tiers. So we are going to be doing it based off of tiers. So as you guys can kind of see right over here, we have tiers 1, 2, and 3. With those tiers, it's not necessarily like who I think is the absolute best, who I think is the, worst, stuff like that. Basically what it's going to be is from a pure fantasy point perspective, where I think that these guys should be drafted at and why I think that they should be drafted. And I'll get to every single one here in a little bit. So tier 1, those are going to be the guys that have to go right at the top. Those are going to have to be guys that are definitely going to be your first round. They're definitely going to be like the first 5 or 6 picks. Tier 2 are going to be guys that, one, I really like because they're clear-cut number 1 options, or because they have a lot of upside, or because they're just really good basketball players. Tier 3, the players in Tier 3, they are going to be players that either are injury concerns, or they are going to be players that that I don't necessarily think are great, but if you can get them at the back end of round 1 or in the second round, I think that that's really good value for them. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. So for Tier 1, we all know who it is. It's Giannis. You got to take Giannis with number 1 pick. He's a very safe pick. He's a very great player all year round, no matter what the circumstances. Giannis is a absolute lock for number 1. In my personal opinion, there's just no other player that you should take. A 30-point per game guy, 12 rebound per game guy, 6 assists per game guy, over 1 steal and 1 block per game, with an average of 55.07 fantasy points per game last year. Dude was fantastic. And if you look at the Boston series, in Game 7, 25, 20, and 9. 2 steals, 1 block. Insane. Game 6, 44, 20, 6, and 1. Game 5, 40, 11, 3, 1, and 1. You guys definitely get what I'm trying to say here. Giannis is fantastic year-round. He averaged in that series 33.86 points per game, 14.71 rebounds per game, 7.14 assists per game, 1 steal per game, and 1.14 blocks per game. So I'm just saying Giannis needs to be your number one guy. Giannis is going to be a safe pick. He's going to give you a lot of fantasy points, a lot of volume every single night. Now, at number 2, I have Luka Doncic. I love Luka this year, especially with them taking out Jalen Brunson. It's going to put even more usage on a guy like Luka Doncic, and they added in Christian Wood. I love the addition of Christian Wood. I think that Christian Wood is going to be a player that is going to make this roster even that much better. Luka, 28.4 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, 9 assists per game, over a steal per game with an average of 51.02 fantasy points per game on 37.3% usage rate last year and 35 minutes per game. I think that he is going to see an increase in that usage. So I love Luka here at number 2. You could make an argument for number 1, but I still think that Luka is a great number 2 if you can get him at that second spot. So that is our second one, Luka. Now for 3 and 4, I have 1A, 1B, and you guys should probably know who they are. I have Jokic at 3, just a slight edge over Embiid. So Jokic, what you aren't getting with Jokic, you are going to be getting with Embiid. If you take a look at it, Jokic, 27.1 points per game, 13.8 rebounds per game, 7.9 assists per game, 1.5 steals per game, and almost a block per game with an average of 56.63 fantasy points per game. And Embiid, like very similar numbers, but just a little bit more of a defensive presence. 30.4 points per game, 11.9 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game, 1.1 steals per game, and 1.5 blocks per game. Both of these centers are great value. Both of these centers are going to be great players that you can get right there at the beginning of your first round, and they're really not going to let you down. Then next we do have Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, obviously one of the best scorers in the entire league, a 30 points per game scorer, 7.5 rebounds per game, and about 6.5 assists per game. He's great. And I do think that with Simmons there instead of James Harden, I think that is going to give more usage for a guy like Kevin Durant. So I really do love Kevin Durant here. I think that he should have a pretty big season, especially since they did end up getting bounced in the first round last year versus the Boston Celtics. I do think that they're going to be coming in with a little bit of fire, and especially a guy like Kevin Durant. Now, at number 6, I have LeBron. I love LeBron still. He's still a force no matter how old he is. 30.3 points per game, 8.2 rebounds per game, 6.2 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.1 blocks. And I do think that with a potentially minimized role of Russell Westbrook in the Lakers, I know that there's rumors of him coming off the bench. We don't really know anything too absurd right now. We just don't know a lot of information. But if there is any sort of a world where there is a minimized role for Russell Westbrook, it's only going to benefit LeBron. He's going to see more touches, more usage, more shots, of the whole 9 yards. So I love LeBron here this year. I think that he should have a even better year than he did last year. The only thing that's going to hold him back is obviously his age and, if he ends up getting injured. But if he can stay healthy, LeBron's a lock here at 6. Now, that's it for Tier 1, but hear me out here for just a second. Those are the top 6 locks. I think that all those guys are all sort of a jack-of-all-trades type of player. Now we're going to get into some more of the guys that I think that are still really good players, and they're going to be good in fantasy, but they just don't really have the whole, triple-double sort of aspect that a lot of these first 6 players do have, and that's kind of what you look for in fantasy, especially if you can find it early. But I think that these players are still going to be very, very valuable here for your fantasy team. So at number 7, we have Steph Curry. The only reason he's so low is just because of the rough start to the season last year. He started off just a little bit rough. If he starts off close to that same roughness, I guess? I don't even know. If he starts off close to the same, I do think that it's still going to be a good payoff option in the end for sure. And I think that he is going to have a much more increased role, similar to what he actually did in the playoffs last year. Steph was phenomenal in the playoffs. We all know that. But I think that Steph goes back to that similar role. That's why I have him at the very, very top of Tier 2. Now at number 8, I have Ja Morant. He's obviously the clear-cut number 1 option here for the Memphis Grizzlies, with averages of 27.4 points per game, 5.7 rebounds per game, 6.7 assists per game. Ja Morant is a great player, and there's really not very many players on that roster that are going to be taking shots away from Ja Morant. Ja Morant is going to be the clear-cut number 1 option. He's going to be able to pass the rock, rebound the ball, score the ball whenever he wants to, and there's not going to be too much competition about it. So that is going to be our number 8 there for Ja Morant. Number 9, we have LaMelo Ball. I like LaMelo a lot this year. He's once again the clear-cut number 1 option. And he's improved in both seasons that he has been here in the NBA. 15.7 points per game in his rookie year on only 13 shot attempts. And in his sophomore year, 20.1 points per game with over 16 shot attempts. So he's shooting the ball a lot more. He's also has really good numbers all around. 6.7 assists per game, or rebounds per game, 7.6 assists per game, and 1.6 steals per game. He's been really, really solid. So, and the thing is the Hornets really didn't get him any more help. So he's still going to be that guy. He's still going to be the main guy there for Charlotte. And obviously with all the Miles Bridges stuff going on, we don't really know what to really expect from him. They could be taking him out of the rotation. I don't know what's going on with Miles Bridges at all. So that being said, that is our number 9. So I do love that one for LaMelo Ball. Now, at 10, we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I love Shai. I love Shai this year. I love Shai. Once again, clear-cut number 1 option, and there's no debating it whatsoever. I think that the only time that there will be some taken away is with Josh Giddey. But with Josh Giddey on the floor, Shai still puts up some insane numbers. And over the season, he averaged 25, 5, and 6. And now with Chet Holmgren out for the rest of the year, I love this even more. Giddey is great, but I do think that his playmaking ability will really be on display since they are going to be running him at the 1, at least projected at least. So I think that's going to leave even more scoring opportunity here for SGA. So I really do love this. At 11, we have Jason Tatum. I love Tatum. I absolutely love Tatum, but I do just worry about him splitting the touches with Jaylen Brown. I know he's done it very frequently in the past, and it could work out. But at the same time, he still averaged 27 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 4.4 assists per game. So there's nothing wrong with Tatum. He's just not the only option on that Celtics roster. So it makes me a little bit more nervous than some of the guys ahead of him. That's all. And at 12, we have James Harden. I know. I get it. James Harden has definitely not been a very appealing option. But once he got to Philly, he still averaged 21 points per game, 10.5 assists per game, 7.1 rebounds per game once he got to Philadelphia, and he averages 7 3-point shot attempts in Philly per game on 33% from the 3. He's not the same James Harden that he used to be. He's not. But still, if you're getting a point guard that's averaging 21 and 11 and 7, I think that's a really good spot to be taking a guy like James Harden, especially if you can get him like at the back end of round 1 or at the start of round 2. I think that's a really good spot for a guy like James Harden. Next, we have Devin Booker. Devin Booker, I will say, is one of my favorite players in the entire NBA. And if you talk about a workload, that dude has it. 27, 5, and 1.1 steals per game with over 20 shot attempts per game last season. You talk about a guy that really does a lot for this offense, that's him. He shoots the ball a lot, and he gets a lot of touches, and I don't really think that's going to change this upcoming season. I think that Devin Booker is, he's kind of getting on that time where he really just wants to win. And you are getting mostly scoring out of Devin Booker. There's no doubt about that. But when Devin Booker's scoring, it's in bunches. Devin Booker's a prolific scorer, and I think that is going to propel him over to that next level. So I do like Devin Booker here. Next, we do have Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal, for most of the year last year, when he was healthy, of course, he was leading the league in scoring. Bradley Beal is a great scorer. There's no question about it. 23 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 6.6 assists per game, which was his career high. Now, I don't love the passing aspect nearly as much. I wish he would have just kind of converted that into scoring, but it's kind of giving you that all-around type of feel, so I definitely don't mind it. And if you look at the help that he has in Washington, I just don't love it. I really just don't love it. I don't think that he's going to be getting a lot of help with that. So I do think that he is going to have some really, really big shoes to fill. So I do like it. I think that Bradley Beal is going to have a huge role here in Washington. And he signed that massive contract. And I think that he's going to try to live up to it. So that is the end of Tier 2. Now, when it comes to Tier 3, like I said, these are going to be players that have like injury concerns, or it's just going to be a little bit questionable when it comes to who I think you guys should pick. But we have Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is going to be very similar to Anthony Davis. He's always an injury concern, but when he does play, he's fantastic. We just haven't really seen Kawhi Leonard play since May of 2021. I mean, he just really hasn't played basketball very much, so it does worry me. But if Kawhi Leonard is as healthy as all these articles are saying, he's going to be just fine. He's going to be a guy you want to take a shot on. Same with Anthony Davis, which is our next guy. Health is always a concern, but when he's healthy, 23, 10, and 3.1 and 1.2 steals per game, 2.3 blocks per game when healthy. He's a monster. Anthony Davis is an absolute monster when he's healthy. But that's the issue. How many games are you really going to get a guy like Anthony Davis? It definitely is a thing that you definitely have to monitor. It can be very, very sketchy. So I do have Anthony Davis there, but he's a guy that I would be very, very weary of in your fantasy basketball drafts. Next, we have Trae Young. I know Trae Young has been great over the course of the last couple of years, but we don't really know exactly how he's going to fit alongside DeJounte Murray. How many opportunities is DeJounte Murray going to take away from a guy like Trae Young? Is Trae Young going to be strictly scoring then? Is DeJounte Murray going to take over the playmaking aspect? We just don't know how it's going to go. He might be, one of these guys might be a guy you might want to wait like a week or two and buy them when they're really low or sell them when they're really high. Either one of those things. But I just think that we could see both these guards are very, very ball dominant, or at least they were as of last year. Hopefully they end up working out. But other than that, I mean, he's great. 28.4 points per game, 9.7 assists per game, one of the highest assist totals in all of basketball last year. He was great. There's no question about it. I'm just worried about the DeJounte Murray trade and everything that had kind of went down with getting DeJounte Murray. It just makes me very, very concerned for that. Now, next, coincidentally enough, DeJounte Murray. DeJounte Murray was great last year. He was one of the closest to a triple-double average of the entire NBA. He was fantastic. He was a very good defensive player, but I think that he's a guy that you can take a stab at in the middle of the second round, and I think it might pay off. Last year, he had 21 points per game, 8.3 rebounds per game, 9.2 assists per game, and that was on that Spurs roster. He has a lot more options here on the Hawks roster to be able to get those assists to. So I just don't know how the Hawks are going to handle it. It's going to be definitely a weird dynamic there, especially at first. But I think DeJounte Murray is definitely a guy you still want to take a stab on for sure. Next, we have Domantas Sabonis. Domantas Sabonis was great as a king, and that's he was great as a king. 18.9 points per game, 12.3 rebounds per game, and 5.8 assists per game. He was absolutely great, and he had one of the best pick and roll games in the entire NBA when him and Fox ran it. So that definitely speaks volume. Him and Fox are a really, really good pair together. And when it comes to the center position, they really have no competition for boards or playing time at the center position. Richaun Holmes last year with Sabonis on the roster, he had less than 20 minutes in all 7 games that he played and didn't score more than 6 points in any of those and only had over 5 rebounds 2 games out of those 7. So with Sabonis on the roster, they basically just pushed Richaun Holmes out the window. And I can't really say I blame him. So Sabonis is going to be this bona fide big man here for the Kings. So I do think that Domantas Sabonis is going to be a do-it-all type of center that you're going to want to get close to this into the second round. Next, we have Karl-Anthony Towns. This is another one that worries me, but only because of the Rudy Gobert thing. I just don't know how it's exactly going to work. I'm assuming Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be at the 4, and Rudy Gobert is going to be at the 5. If that's the case, okay, sure. I mean, I think that Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be more of a scorer this year, as opposed to doing whatever else he was doing as of last year. But I think that this is a really good spot. If you're going to get Karl-Anthony Towns at 20, I think that's a really good spot for him. I think he's going to have a very high scoring year. And I think that he can still get some rebounds. I just think it's going to be depleted just a little bit. So we're going to really be able to see what Karl-Anthony Towns' best skill set is when it comes to shooting, because obviously he's one of the best shooting big men that we've seen in a long time. So he's going to really put that on full display at the 4. So I really do like this one as our 20th and final player here in Tier 3, Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, I do have a couple honorable mentions that I did want to go ahead and throw out there. We have Zion. Zion, we just don't know about the injuries. We just don't know anything about the injuries. But I do love Zion. I think that if he comes back healthy, which it looks like he is, it looks like he's in shape. If he comes back healthy and is even half as good as he was in the past, I think he's a really viable option here for your fantasy basketball roster. But I also do like Cade Cunningham. I think that Cade Cunningham has a very great potential to break out, and he just barely missed my list. Just barely. And if you wanted to say he could be above a lot of the guys in Tier 3, I wouldn't even argue with you. He is definitely going to be the main option there in Detroit with Jaden Ivey. I really think that Cade Cunningham is going to have a great year. He's going to be a guy you want to get early in these drafts for sure. Next, we have Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes, I like Scotty Barnes a lot. I think he's going to get a lot of touches in Toronto. They were kind of running a point forward type of thing here with Scotty Barnes as of last year, but it just makes me a little nervous because the Toronto Raptors are such a good overall team that it makes me really nervous to pick a guy like Scotty Barnes just because we never know who's going to be taking over that night. And if it's not Scotty Barnes, then he might not get nearly as many fantasy points as normal. And the last honorable mention that I do have is Evan Mobley. I like Evan Mobley a lot, but there's so much talent in Cleveland, especially with adding in Donovan Mitchell. I think that it's going to add even more or even fewer touches here for a guy like Evan Mobley, and I just don't love it. I think that Evan Mobley is going to be great. I really do. But I just think this is not a great spot for him, especially with all this talent. I think that the Cavs are going to be a very deep winning team, and that's not exactly what you're looking for in these fantasy drafts. So that is going to do it for today's video. I really do hope that I gave you guys some useful information. I'm going to try to pump out these fantasy basketball videos very, very frequently. So make sure that you guys do like, comment, subscribe. Turn on that notification bell so you guys know every single time that I post. But that's going to do it for me. This is King Sander signing out. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Peace.